first episode of the Creation Grounds. I'm very excited about this. I'm your host, Aaron Lloyd, and in this interview, we talk about how to develop belief and the persistence to succeed with a very good friend of mine, Kendra Holloway. Kendra is a Kentucky-bred, all-around creative individual who found her way to New York, the Big Apple. Now, she has a background in production, and she's interned with the giant Tyler Perry in Atlanta, and she's worked besides Robin Givens in her most recent work, Definitely Divorcing. Check her out. She also plays Udab in the web series Champagne. Check that out. She's also got some impressive mentors on her side, and she likes to write in her spare time. The girl likes to stay busy. Now, with all of that said, let's get to the show, because your success is everyone's success. This is your voice. We've all been knocked to the ground. Let's create the way to the sky. Welcome to the Creation Grounds. Enjoy this episode with Kendra Holloway.
I am originally from Hopkinsville, Kentucky, and that's about 45 minutes outside of Nashville, Tennessee.
Growing up in a small town like that, what was like the influence for you as a person? Because you're in a big city now, so how has that influenced you?
Well, as a person, I've been blessed to have a lot of supporting family members. I did not have it easy growing up, but I don't think, a lot of people didn't have it easy. But, it was hard. My mom was a single mother, so a lot of obviously my influence came from her, and just kind of seeing who she was as a person, and just spending time with her. She was really invested in me, and she encouraged me to have conversation and to ask questions and to just be active. So a lot of the ways that I guess they would be, a lot of the ways that people look at like kind of Will Smith and Jada Pinkett and how they raise Jaden and Willow, and they look at that as being like progressive. I guess my mother did that in subtle ways with me growing up, as far as like encouraging me to ask questions, especially when she came from an era where they did not ask questions, just things were as they were. You did not have conversations with adults. You didn't do any of that. But so she was definitely a great influence on me. And then I also, I had my grandmother who was right across the street from me. I had my stepdad who was right next door to me. Like, I had the preacher that was across the street. All these family members, like, it was a unit of people. That's how small the town is, where everyone like literally lived within walking distance of each other. So if I needed a break as a kid from my mom because we got in a little bit of a disagreement or something like that, I could walk down to my aunt's house, who lived like a 3-minute walk down the street. So it was cool in that way. So I think everybody kind of equally influenced me, just in various ways.
That's pretty dope.
Yeah.
So it sounds like your mom is a pretty big inspiration in your life. Mm-hmm. Is she one of the biggest, you would say, or? Definitely.
She's still my absolute best friend, and when I say that, I really do mean that, because thank God there's not a day that goes by that we don't speak. We text each other, good morning, I love you, have a blessed day, every single morning. And then we talk to each other late at night until one of us gets tired. So if I don't talk to anybody else in a day, it's like my mom is like the one person that we communicate all the time. And I've had that relationship with her for a very long time, because it's kind of like, the way that she raised me, it was like, never leave the house without saying that you love someone. Never go to sleep angry, because you don't have to,
Right.
You can't take those things for granted. So I'm blessed in that way.
For sure. I mean, was she an actress as well, or was she creative?
Okay, this is the interesting thing about my mom. I actually found out something about my mother earlier, I want to say this week or late last week. She used to tap dance as a kid. I did not know that. I know that on her side of the family, we have a lot of artistic people. We have people who are producers and directors, and who have written even Broadway productions, and are poets and different things like that. And as far as I knew, prior to knowing that she was she was into tap as a kid, I knew that in my small town, there was a movie that was made in like the 70s. It was called Lawmen Without a Gun. And Dick, if I'm not mistaken, I think Dick Gregory was in the movie. I don't know. I believe so. And they shot it in my hometown, and my mom was like an extra in a church scene, and that was the first time that she had ever been on set. And she absolutely hated it. She didn't understand why it was taking so long, why it was taking 12 hours to get one shot. This woman leaves, she leaves. She's like, I'm done. Like, I don't want to do this. So in that regard, my mother has like a lot of hidden talents and things that she just doesn't even kind of put together, but she could do a lot of things, but it's just that was never her forte. The lady knows how to play the piano. She's tried to teach me in the past, and that music just wasn't my thing. So she can do a lot of things, but she wasn't an actor. But I do come from a family of preachers.
Okay.
She's not one of them, but I've had preachers around me my entire life. My dad is a preacher. My stepfather has his own radio station in Hopkinsville. So it's a group of people who know how to communicate.
Right.
Yeah. So
when did you get struck with the acting bug? When did you start from a small town like Kentucky to want to be able to act? What's your earliest memory?
Yeah, I think that. Well, I knew that I liked television at a very early age because I didn't necessarily, I didn't grow up in a town that was around theater.
Right.
Like that, we had a theater, but things would come every now and then, but that wasn't something that was really on my radar. So I know that. My mom tells the story of me watching Pee Wee Herman as a child, and at the time she did. Yeah, it was a really good show. But at the time she didn't have cable, so I don't know if you remember this, but back in like the '90s and probably before that, the television screen used to have like these squiggly static lines, right?
Yeah.
And every now and then, it would clear up, so you could actually see the screen. So I would watch Pee Wee Herman. And I would wait for it to clear up, and it always cleared up like right at the end of the show when he was like on his bicycle and he was waving bye to the viewer. So I would I thought at that time that if I kind of peeked underneath the squiggly lines and I could see more of the screen, and I would just like wait to say bye to Pee Wee. And my mom walked in one day and I was waving bye to Pee Wee, and she was like, okay, I need to get cable. Something is up with this kid because she's glued to the television screen. So that was my first memory of really being intrigued by a world outside of my own.
Wow.
Was Pee Wee Herman. But as far as the actual acting bug, I don't know if I can pinpoint it to one particular thing. I know various things were big influences to me. Obviously, growing up in the 90s, we saw television shows like Moesha. We saw Brandy kind of do everything, and that was tantalizing. That was amazing to me. I knew that I loved poetry. I knew that I was reading I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, Maya Angelou stuff when I was about 5 or 6 years old. So I liked like about 5 or 6 years old. I would walk around the house because we didn't have a car when I was growing up, so we would during the weekends my mom and I would walk to the library. And that's how she kept me like active. She knew that I loved words and I loved doing like Easter speeches and different things in church. So she was like, well, let me feed this. So we went to the library. We would pick up different things. And she knew that I was kind of gearing towards looking for people that looked and sounded like my environment. And she knew that Maya obviously was one of those people.
For sure.
So I would, pick up the book and I would memorize these things and I would just walk around the house and like recite them all the time.
Perform them, kind of?
Yeah, I don't know if at the time that I understood that I was actually performing. I just knew that I was just walking and talking, and I was just saying what I had read. So I guess in a way that was performance for me. So like I said, it was a mixture of a lot of different things that made me eventually settle on acting. But spoken word and being heard and just words in general were always interesting to me. Yeah.
So, I mean, you from reading and performing Maya Angelou, you decide to go to Atlanta, Clark University, right?
Yeah, I mean, some things obviously happened between there, but yeah, eventually over time, I was able to articulate for myself that I wanted to be an actor, and I think maybe the one person that kind of sealed the deal for me was probably Cicely Tyson, and I remember hearing an interview of hers in which she said that she understood during the civil rights movement, that she could not afford the luxury of just being an actor. And at that time, I remember sitting once again in front of the television and hearing a voice just as clear as day saying, "You're too smart just to act." Now, at the time, like, I was like, well, maybe I'm not supposed to be an actor. But then it finally hit me, no, you are supposed to act, but there are going to be a lot of other things that are going to fall into your lap that you are going to be responsible for as well, in addition to this one thing.
Such as?
You eventually, writing. Being very intrigued with producing, even video editing, which are all things that I do.
That's what you went to school for, right?
I went to school, eventually I went to Clark Atlanta University in Atlanta, right across the street from Spelman and Morehouse. Shout out to the AUC. Woo-hoo.
Shout out.
Yeah. So I went to Clark Atlanta University, and I said that I was going to study acting there, which was really weird for a lot of people because Clark isn't necessarily known as like a acting school. But I knew that I wanted to go to a historically black college, and at the time it just kind of it happened naturally for me to want to go to Clark Atlanta. So I went there. I majored in acting for my first year. And then some things kind of, happened with the department, and it just shifted me into the television and film realm. I think at the time, like, the school was kind of doing like more of like musicals and things that I wasn't really into because I once again, I said I didn't grow up around theaters. So the whole musical concept, I knew it existed, but it was something that was totally foreign to me. Like, right. I knew I wanted to work on, like, Raising Sun. I wanted to do, like, August Wilson. I wanted to do all these things, and, they weren't doing that. So I was like, okay, there has to be another way. And I was always intrigued with, at least with the radio aspect because of my stepdad and, and had done, like, different little television, like, news spots in my small town. So I was like, well, I can learn it from the back end. Yeah. And then hopefully that will bring me to the forefront. And also my dad always told me growing up, if you love something, you learn everything that you possibly can about it. So that was my thinking, was that if I, enrich myself and give myself as much knowledge with the business, with behind the camera, as much in front of the camera, then that'll happen for me. But I have to say this: while I was majoring in television and film, I also at the same time was going to the Alliance Theater.
Kenny Leon, right? That's his. No, that's True Colors. He has.
Yeah, Kenny Leon has True Colors. Yeah, so I think at the time True Colors was he still had it, but it wasn't, I guess, as big of a deal as it is like now. Like, right. It was still kind of on the rise, but the one that was accessible to me at the time, and also a very well known and very respected theater in Atlanta, is the Alliance Theater. Right. And I happened to go to an acting workshop one day, and I didn't know that he was the director of the acting program at the time, but I met with him, and he saw my enthusiasm, and he was like, would you like to come and do a work study situation with me, where you come in for like a couple of hours on like a Saturday or something like that, and as your pay you can take acting classes here. And that's what I did while I was in school at Clark Atlanta. I was studying at the Alliance Theater.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So you have this background, and like your father said, you learn everything you can about a certain craft. Mm-hmm. How has being in behind the scenes with television production and all that helped you as an actress? Do those kind of gel?
Mm-hmm. It definitely helps me see things from a full perspective. It kind of, I would have to say, like, it obviously it helps me to see the storyline a lot better. Mm-hmm. To understand where everyone is going. It's kind of like, I'm not saying that I am God. I'm just saying, how like God kind of, we envision that God looks down on all of us and can see the big picture sometimes in our lives. Right. And that's how it is whenever I think, like, whenever I'm writing or whenever I am, editing something or working on something from behind the scenes, I can see the full picture. Right. Because as an actor, your responsibility is to stay connected to the character. and to whoever it is that you are communicating with at the time. So this is your life, like right now, like you're living Aaron's life. So sometimes things happen in our own lives that we don't quite understand. But the beauty about being behind the scenes is that you see it. Like, it's like, I know that at the end of this show, you're gonna die, you're gonna live, you're gonna, you're gonna get there. Just, just keep going, and that's kind of the difference. And it also makes you appreciate how much the entire crew and the entire production team has to do with the actual outcome of a project. So, people always talk about, actors sometimes, like, they just walk around with their noses stuck up in the air because they just believe that they can do whatever it is that they do. But, when you're forced to think outside of that, and you actually do become appreciative of the people who, are scrubbing the toilets, to the people that are writing, to the people that are producing. You understand what it takes. So you, as an actor, come more prepared for certain things than maybe you would have had you not known that there's an entire team that makes this thing possible.
And while you were at Clark, were you a part of any productions, acting-wise, or did you do mostly?
I did 3 Penny Opera while I was at Clark. I did a few original pieces at Spelman, and also I had a lot of friends who were filmmaker friends. So we did a lot of indie films together as well at Clark.
Okay. So that took you to New York. Now you're already in Atlanta, which is up and coming in production. Was it back then? Was it like kind of what it is now?
It was coming up. Obviously, you had Tyler Perry, who I was fortunate enough to be an intern for Tyler Perry Studios early on. I think like my junior year of college, I did that. So I interned for a lot of these different people, and at that time, it was kind of like I didn't, like you're trying to find your way, so you don't want to like push the fact that you want to be an actor, because they hired you to do something else, and you're just like, well, I need to know this too, and you think you're gonna kind of teeter-totter your way, but I didn't articulate to them that no, I really want to be in front of the screen. Like I couldn't put that together. But at the time, to answer your question, at the time, Tyler Perry was obviously the #1 production studio that was happening at that time. So there were a lot of people that were coming in, but they were still mainly getting their production teams, their actors, their everything from like LA and New York. And then they were coming to Atlanta to shoot things.
Right.
So it was a completely different thing from what it is now. Now within like the last 5 to 6 years, it's grown tremendously. But at that time, it was still kind of up and coming.
Okay, so you took a Greyhound, you said, or not a Greyhound, or a bus to New York. What year was that?
This was 2012. 2012, yeah.
Okay, and that was your first year out of college?
No, this was I had been out of school already for a year. So I was working as a production assistant at Georgia Public Broadcasting, which is the PBS station for Atlanta. And they eventually laid a lot of different people off, so I got laid off.
Oh, man.
And I took some time to kind of regroup. I went back home for a minute, tried to get my stuff together, eventually made my way back to Atlanta. And then when that happened, I had previously worked for a casting director, Tracy Kilpatrick, who I am still very good friends with to this day and love her dearly. But she called me in one day and was like, hey, I am casting for this movie called Prisoners with Viola Davis. Can you come in and be my assistant on the project? So I went, I did that. Along the way, we started talking, and I made her aware of the fact that I really wanted to act. And she was like, okay, well, she gave me an opportunity. She took a chance on me. She had obviously a lot of friends that were in the industry and in the market in Atlanta. And she called up a few agents and people like that and said, hey, like, I have this assistant. I don't know if she can act or not, but she really wants to. And I really like her as a person. And she basically told me, she was like, if you go in here and you don't get an agent, that's on you. That's not on me.
Right.
Just to put it out there. So I went in, I met with a couple of different people, and eventually I got an agent from it. And, don't know if, I think right when I was starting to kind of go out for certain things, I had this thing inside of me that said I needed to hone my craft
Right.
in a way that at the time I didn't believe that I could necessarily do in Atlanta. And I talked to a few people about it, and I was encouraged by a relative of mine who works in the industry. You know, if you really want to be an actor, you got to go to New York.
It's the Mecca.
It's the Mecca. And I was terrified of New York. I'd never wanted to be here. I had been here one other time, and it freaked me out to the point that I was like, oh, no, hell no, I'm not doing it. And eventually, like, I came here, and the rest is history. So I came here, like you said, on a bus with about, because remind you, I was laid off, and with the exception of, like, the little money that I made, like, freelancing here and there.
Right.
Probably had about $50 in my pocket. And I was only supposed to be here for like a week or a weekend or something like that, and ended up just not going back.
Did you have a place, or were you like couch surfing? You were couch surfing.
When I came here, because I was only supposed to be here originally for a short amount of time. I was supposed to stay with a friend of mine, and I did, but he was staying with someone at the time, and then it just, while I was here, it was weird because people were calling me and saying, well, I know this person that lives in New York. You should hook up with this person. Eventually, I got hooked up with a friend of a friend, and he had talked to me and basically said, if you decide to stay, I don't know what your plans are, but if you decide to stay, I have roommates, but we also have a couch, and my roommates are really cool. So, just let me know.
Race.
Yeah, and I got like a marketing job, like literally within like a 3-day time span. Got like a marketing job, and then I was walking down the street one day, and it was literally the day before I was supposed to get back on the bus to go back to Atlanta, and I said, God, like I don't feel like I need to go back.
Right.
I had my ticket literally ready to go back, and I just said I don't feel like I need to go back, and there was this I was praying about it, and there was this homeless man actually that walked up to me. Didn't even ask me for anything. He literally, this is how you know angels are real. He walked up to me and he just stopped, like right there, and he looked me in my face and he said, whatever it is that you're thinking about doing, you should do.
Wow.
I said, excuse me? And he was like, listen, I've spent my entire life, I'm now in my 60s. He was like, I spent my entire life living my life for other people.
Wow.
And, I've been on drugs. I've been through like the ringer, and now I'm finally about to get out of this city, and I'm going to live in the country somewhere, and I'm going to do what I want to do. Don't wait until you're my age.
Right.
Now, of course, like, and he walked away.
This
that was it.
Bus station?
No, this is the day before I was supposed to get back on the bus. So I was just walking in the city.
Yeah.
Praying and asking God to show me what I needed to do, and that's when I encountered him, and he just walked away. And you hear about these encounters all the time, but they really do exist. He walked away. And I said, that's it, I'm staying.
Wow.
And I stayed, and the rest is history. So I served for a while, did the New York hustle.
So that's amazing, because they say if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. So that's really inspirational, because you're supposed to stay for a week with $50 in your pocket, and you somehow find your way and you're still here.
Yeah.
So in those first years, what were some of your challenges? What were some of your triumphs? Obviously, staying here was a triumph, but what were some of the challenges?
It was also a challenge as well.
It still is.
I was like, it's one and the same. Staying here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a triumph when you can make it from month to month. It's like, yes, I'm here.
I paid rent this month.
Yes. But it's also a challenge, because what am I going to eat?
Right.
But, no, yeah, totally. I mean, along the way, like, obviously, I've met some incredible people, one of which being you.
Well, thank you.
My God, like, I think about that all the time, and I can't talk about my friends too much, because I really do start to get, like, super sentimental, but, and emotional, rather, but, like, I've been fortunate enough to have a good community of people around me, and that has been one of the biggest and best blessings that anyone could ever ask for, because it's hard, like you said, it's hard. And whenever you decide to actually say that this is what I want to do with my life, and there's no rules, and there are people on either end of the spectrum that are still going for the same thing that you're going for, you need a circle, a support team around you. And that's definitely like you know, the fact that I have that is amazing. The fact that I had that then, and God literally started setting things up for me when I got here, before I even got here, is amazing to me. So yeah.
It's incredible. So you're theater trained. You meet one of the other people that you met is Felicia, right?
Yeah, Valicia LeKay.
And she's an important mentor to you, right?
Yeah, she is. So interesting about Valicia LeKay. So she is a Broadway superstar, as I call her. She's modest, so she's like, no. But she was the original Diana Ross on Broadway, and she's, you know, Tony nominated actress, Grammy nominated singer as well. But basically, one of my first jobs when I got here, like literally, and still is my job now, was working for various Broadway productions doing merchandise. And so when I first got here, like I was selling merchandise on Broadway, probably like within a month of me getting here. So the first show, now I had always wanted to see a Broadway show, did not see a Broadway show up until this point. The first Broadway show that I had seen was Motown the Musical. And it happened to be the very first show that I'm working. So someone is paying me to see the show. Granted, I had to stand in the back of the theater, but I stood there the entire 2 hours and 45 minutes and watched this thing. And at the time, because my ignorant behind doesn't know anything, especially about musical theater,
right.
I thought that this woman who was coming on stage sounding exactly like Diana Ross, singing exactly like Diana Ross, had like a voice box. No, I thought that she had I thought that she was, especially when it came to the singing, I thought that they were playing the track and that she was just mouthing, you know, lip syncing the words. So I had no idea. Eventually, I became familiar with her because there's a part in the show, for anyone who has seen it, where she's at the back of the theater, and she comes through the audience and she, you know, does her final song, Ain't No Mountain High Enough. So she would come to the back of the theater, and I would see her because obviously the production team and all of us that work in the theater would be in the back. And she told her hairstylist, not her hairstylist, but one of her stylists, Richard Gross, she said, tell that girl that I like her hair. Now, I have big, like, I know you guys can't see it, but I have, like, big natural hair. And so he came over and he said, hey, we really like your hair. And I was like, ooh, I like her. Like, I love her. So we just kind of, like, started talking from then on out. And, you know, it became, like, a real, like, bond, and I really looked up to her as a mentor. So, yeah, she's awesome.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Goes in with that community, that support that you need. So, you recently just got your first big feature. It's a film.
Yeah, television film.
So from being theater trained in the Mecca, honing your craft, to booking your first movie, that's big stuff. So how did working in a theater influence like film or TV work? Is it the same? I know with the theater, you have the energy of the audience, but with the set, it's kind of different. So for our listeners, like, how is that different? What were some of the challenges? What do you wish you knew going in?
Yeah. So television, film is, it's a little different. I had a teacher one time, probably about a year before I booked this, tell me that, you know, people always think, especially in acting, like they think that, you know, you have to be smaller for television and film. That's what we're told. But his way of saying it, he was like, no, but I don't want you to be smaller. I want you to be who you are. You're the size that you are. And I think really it comes down to the mindset of the person. I thought about this. I think that maybe for television and film, at least for me, what it ended up being was an intimate, it's a more intimate setting because the camera is right there, obviously. You're not showing out for anybody because they can already see it. You know, like your scene partner can already see what it is that you're doing. You don't have to go the extra mile and try to prove a point.
Right.
So for me, it's kind of like, I like to think of it as in like us being in this room right now. You know, it's just the two of us and we're having conversation.
Right.
You know, now if we're trying to explain this conversation, you know, in a bigger room, to 5 other people, then of course we're going to be a little bit more like animated. We're going to try and stress certain things because they weren't present in the small room to hear it, you know?
Right.
And that's kind of how I look at theater versus television and film. You know, it's just a little bit more like you're here, you see what I'm doing, you know? Theater, it's like everybody needs to understand what I meant when I said X, Y, and Z. You know,
right.
what this character is saying to me and how it is affecting my performance or what I'm doing here on this stage. So in that regard, you know, now I get what he was saying. You know, like, you know, the story is what it is. You know, what you are going to do is what you're going to do, obviously, unless like a director comes in and steps in and says, hey, I don't like the way that you're doing that, or
right.
I don't like the way that you're saying that. But it is what it is. It's just, who are you making the point to? You know, are you making the point to the camera, or are you making the point to an entire audience? Because then I think when you start to think about it like that, you understand. You know,
yeah.
At least for me, I understand.
Okay, so you're working with some heavyweights in this film. I mean, Robin Givens, who I understand is one of your huge heroes.
Yeah,
you got to work with her.
Yeah, I did. She played my mother, Monica, and you know, I played Kayla, her troubled teenage daughter who has some drug abuse issues, but basically she's gone through a divorce, and she's now married to a new husband whom I, you know, intentionally don't like. So yeah, E. Roger Mitchell plays my stepfather, Aaron, and both of them were amazing. Obviously, like I, like so many other people, grew up watching Robin Givens, and I know like everyone knows her from Boomerang and all these movies with like Eddie Murphy and being like the 90s like it woman. But you know, like I had admired her work since she did a film back in the 80s, The Women of Brewster Place, which is a movie that a lot of people, it surprises me how many of, I guess, our generation still don't know about it. And maybe it's just, like I said, because my mother got cable, so she just thought that she was just going to expose me to everything and tape everything. But, you know, so I'd seen her play a strong, young, kind of activist, you know, black woman then, when it wasn't necessarily popular for young black women to be intelligent at that time. It was just kind of like, you know, you're supposed to be pretty, just look pretty and look cool, you know. But she actually had a mind in that, and Cicely Tyson played her mother at the time, so you know, those aspects together, it's just like, ugh. But I had respected Robin for a while, so when I found out that she was playing my mother, I was freaking out, as you know, because you helped me with that project and get ready for it, but and getting ready for it rather. But you know, she was really gracious, and you know, she taught me a few things and passed like a couple of words of wisdom down for me that you know, like Cicely Tyson and Felicia Rashad had passed down to her, and I really got a chance to tell her, you know, just thank you for her artistry and for showing us, as especially as young women of color, that we didn't have to you know, be a certain way in order to be relevant, you know. So she's awesome. And E. Roger Mitchell, I'd seen, you know, all his stuff, and actually I'd seen him prior to obviously working with him, but I wanted so badly to go back and to watch other stuff, because I knew like this is the guy, the other black guy in The Flight with Denzel, you know. So I knew like if you're gonna be in a movie with Denzel, as you call him, Denzel. You know, my God, like, you're a beast. And I was so scared, like, before we actually start shooting, I didn't even want to go back and like watch anything, which I'm glad I didn't. But in that moment, you know, we had a lot of kind of heavy scenes together, and it was really cool because he would, you know, teach me certain things like stay still here or move here. You know, he would tell me small things that definitely helped me out, and he was a real support. He told me from the beginning, like, I'm here for you. Whatever it is that you need, you let me know, because I got your back, and I want you to do what it is that you do. So he's definitely, like, he's awesome.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
So, in terms of something that somebody who maybe is coming from Kentucky, who could potentially be listening to this, what would you say that is an actionable step or thing that they can do to further their career or get to where you are? Especially if they're like a woman of color or, you know.
the number one thing I would say is just is to number one, I would say believe.
Yeah.
Don't stop believing, because there are going to be obstacles. There are going to be times when everyone in your face is telling you no, literally. And sometimes those people, happen to be the people that are closest to you. And it's not that they are, that they mean ill on you or wish you, horrible things in your future. It's sometimes people do out of things of, they do things out of protection,
right.
But you have to believe in whatever it is that, that you feel led to do. And don't let anyone at all or any circumstance take that away from that. And then outside of believing, stay prepared. Stay prepared. I think back to living in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, when, like I said, there was, little to no performance, arts, performance-based things that were going on. But, I was doing things at church.
Right.
I knew that, I wanted to do that. I think at a very early age, even me walking around the house and memorizing things, that helped me with my memorization. Because even now, whenever I'm trying to prepare for a role, or I'm working on a new monologue, or whatever the case may be, like, I'm walking around and just saying the lines, just do things and say the lines and get so comfortable in the words that you don't have to hold the book or the script with you. Throw it down, make up a bed, say the lines. Like, these are all things that I learned, growing up in my hometown. Also, like, I remember at one point, like I said, I didn't have like a job in the arts, but I kept looking for communications based jobs. Like, I was working, not telemarketing, because that's when you're like selling things, but I guess they call it market research, when you're like calling people and doing these surveys. I was doing that when I was 16, 17 years old.
Wow.
But I knew that over the phone, I was working on my characters. I would be working on characters. I would be thinking about different things and saying, well, say this is if you are a professor. Say this is if you are a happy-go-lucky kid. Say this is if, like, I would just play with my craft in that way, trying to help myself, because I knew eventually one day I would need this training. So you have to make those things happen for you. And if and when you decide to move to New York, because I believe even if you don't go to New York automatically, because now like you said, Atlanta's coming up, LA is still there. There's a lot of other places that are coming up in the world, so you don't necessarily, have to go to New York automatically, but I believe that every great artist does walk through New York at some point in their lives. But whenever you come to New York, like you learn to make things happen for yourself, because there are moments when no one is calling you, no one is emailing you, nobody is checking for you like that. You can go on like 20 auditions in a week and you might not get a call back for anything, or either you get called back for half of them but don't book any of them.
Right.
It happens all the time. And in order to keep yourself up to speed, you have to find ways to always work on your craft. Always, always, always. There are so many times I'm preparing for things that I don't even know what I'm preparing for, but I just know I got to get better.
You got to stay sharp.
You got to stay sharp, because you can't pray for something that you're not prepared for,
How has prayer, like, helped you in your, because that's big, your prayer life. So how has that helped you, or like, what would you say?
It's everything.
It's everything?
It's everything. I, like, we all look up to Mother Oprah, but I have to say that. Hi, Mama Oprah. But like, it really does ground you.
Yeah.
And one thing that, regardless of whatever it is that you do, you don't even have to be an actor per se, but whatever it is that you do, if you want to be great at it, you have to work internally, because every single thing else is going to be reflective of what is being done internal of yourself. If you believe in a force that is greater than you, if you understand that, whatever you decide to call it, if you decide to call it God or a pencil, I don't care, but if you understand that there is a force that is inside of you that carries you throughout life and makes the unthinkable happen. You know, the good things happen. The things that literally change your entire life happen and pull you through. You'll be able, like, all of those things will be reflective in whatever it is that you do in your craft, you know, because you are connecting with the thing that is the greatest. Everything that you do will be great, you know.
That's amazing.
But you have to, but for me, like, it's like I try. I mean, and of course, like all of us, you know, we have our downfalls and, you know, get off track sometimes. But I know that I have to check in. So for me, prayer and meditation are really, really important for me. Like, it's like the day can't start, the day can't end without gratitude, without getting grounded, because all of this could go away, you know. Everything, nothing in this life is certain, especially nothing in this business
for sure
is certain, you know. And because of the fact that people always say to me that, you know, you're an actor, it's not that serious. And for a while I actually said that too, like, as far as like us doing like open heart surgery. But then I thought about it, I was like, no, but we are surgeons of the soul.
Ooh.
That's even more serious, you know.
Right.
You're dealing with people's souls. You're dealing with their emotions. You're dealing with whether or not this person is actually going to kill themselves today. You know?
Yeah.
Whether or not this person can forgive themselves for something that they did or did not do. Whether the world continues to condemn them for things that they did or did not do. That's more important.
Right.
You are people's beliefs. You are God in the physical that people see and that they believe in. So whenever you're given that type of responsibility as an artist, you got to take it seriously. And that means that you have to stay grounded. You can't allow yourself, and I'm guilty of this too, because sometimes I get like super anxious about things, but I try to like tap in and say, Kendra, you can't do that, because if you start feeling that inside of here, everything that you produce will look exactly like that comes from within. You know, so you have to make sure that you come in with the most honest, purest intent, and that type of reflection for someone else.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you're working on right now?
Like I said, I have the web series that's coming out, so you can actually, you know, keep in contact with me via social media and find out more about that, because I don't know the exact release date, but I do write. Champagne, the web series, is out right now. Other than that, there's a few readings that I'm doing next month, and once again, keep track with me on social media so that you can.
And the social media is.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. It's at Kendra, Kendra, the number 2, and then Shay, Shay. So it's Kendra to Shay. So that's the easiest way to find out everything about me. It has, you know, all of my information and all my going ons. That sounds so old. And then also my website, www.kendraholloway, HOLLOWAY.info. So all of the up-to-date stuff will be posted there.
Okay.
Yeah.
This has been great. Any parting inspiring words or anything like that?
Just keep at it.
Just keep at it.
It's very simple. Just keep at it. I don't care. Unless God tells you to do something else, you're doing the right thing. You're okay.
Doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Kendra Holloway.
Yes.
You've been a gift. You've been a blessing.
Oh, I love you,
Thanks
bro.
for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
That's it for this episode of The Creation Grounds. I'm your host, Aaron Lloyd. Be sure to check out our Instagram for future and previous guest info, and check out our YouTube channel in the show notes below. Email us with any suggestions at thecreationgrounds@gmail.com. And if you got something out of this, I'd really appreciate if you spread the word and the love. Until next time, this is Aaron Lloyd telling you that the sky is the limit. Stay creative.